All right, good morning, everybody. We are going to have the sermon in two parts this morning. We do that every once in a while. And following the second part a little later, we're going to have prayer time, which is something we do once a quarter, where we make some space and some time for you to pray individually or gather with others at that time. If you want to get up and gather with other people or go to where somebody is or go out in the lobby with people and pray, that's a wonderful thing. So we're going to have some time and space for that near the end of the service. I do want to emphasize as well that we're really excited that next week is Commissioning Sunday. Commissioning Sunday is something that we do every year to commission our students and teachers and support staff at the schools back for another school year. And so bring all your kiddos. If you've got friends, it's a great time to invite. You know, there's a felt need as the school year is starting, especially if a child is going into kindergarten or entering middle school or entering high school for the first time. Parents can be a little nervous about that. You say, hey, you know, we're doing a special service at church. We're going to pray for our kids and commission them on the school year. And if you don't have friends who are with kids that age, any teacher does not, will never say no to prayers. So, if you got a friend or a family member who is a teacher or a support staff at the school, say, hey, we're going to have a special service. We're going to pray over you. We'd love to have you. It'd be a great time to invite somebody next week, help them start off the school year on a good note. And so we look forward to that, and it'll be youth-led, which is always great. We love to have our young people up here leading the worship service, and so we're really excited about that. So that's going to be next week. This week, we're continuing in our Church Plus Home series, which is the opportunity for us as a congregation to all dialogue together around the same scripture. So what we studied in Bible class from our little kids all the way to our oldest is the same passage that we're also studying here as a body in the service. And what we really, really, really would like you to do is take the opportunity to invite a young family or somebody in a different generation out to a meal, or invite them over to your house for a meal, or just get together with them and dialogue about the scripture together. In your bulletin, you will see there is a big box that is pink that's got some questions. So even if you go, I won't remember what the sermon and the Bible class was about when I get to lunch, just take your bulletin with you. And then as you're enjoying some lunch, you can look across the table at your grandchild, or these friends that you've invited to their child, or at somebody who's 30 years younger than you, and you can pull out your bulletin and you can ask them some questions and you can dialogue. And we're creating the habits of dialoguing around Scripture as families and with friends, because that is the key to discipleship. It's clearly spelled out in Deuteronomy 6. We are commanded by God to do it, and we're just trying to create the space for us to do that together. So as we do that today, we're diving into this passage from 1 Samuel 8, where Israel is asking for a king. And I think this passage is all about FOMO. Now raise your hand if you know what FOMO is. Now raise your hand if you have no idea what FOMO is. All right. FOMO stands for fear of missing out. Alicia and I were talking about this the other day, and she said, FOMO, that stands for fear of being left out. And I said, no, that's FOBLO. She laughed and said, no, you're right. FOMO, fear of missing out. It is sometimes hard to remember the acronym, but it's not something hard to identify with because every one of us has felt it. And so this is that idea of you're having a bad day at work, and you come home and it's just kind of rainy and gloomy, and you get home and you pull up social media and you get your text, and it's that friend or family member that's in Florida at the beach. And you remember that 3 months ago they said, hey, you should come with us. And you said, I don't think I can. And now you're sitting home sad and depressed because you're like, I wish I was in Florida in the beach, not here today. That's the fear of missing out. It's this feeling of I am missing out on something good. They're having all the fun without me. I remember when my sister went to college, we didn't eat out very much. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. We hardly ever ate out. The only thing we usually ate out was the pizza from Little Caesars because it was so cheap. And one time when my sister left, it's surprising how much money you save when a child goes off to college on food. And so my parents, they decided to splurge. They took us to McDonald's. I mean, it was great. I didn't know that we could go to such a 5-star establishment as that. But literally, my sister called home after a few weeks at school. She was at Oklahoma Christian, and she calls home, and she's talking on the phone, and we can, you remember, we didn't have speakerphone back then, but everybody kind of gathered, and you held the phone like this. And so, my parents, Beth's on the phone. We all come running in there, we're talking. Well, what have you guys been up to? And, of course, long distance costs per minute, so we got to talk quick. And Mom says, oh, we did this and this and this, and we took the kids to McDonald's. And Beth goes, McDonald's? You never took us to McDonald's when I was at home? And she had FOMO. She was missing out on that great experience of soggy fries and a cheap hamburger. I mean, she was just missing out on it, you know. But we've all been there. We've all had that feeling. Sometimes it happens because we are afraid. We're afraid that we'll get left behind by people. We're afraid that they're going to have experiences without us, and we won't be part of them, and we won't be part of those memories. And then they'll have jokes and they'll have stories, and we won't be part of that, and we'll be left out. The phrase was first coined all the way back in 1996. There's a marketer named Dan Herman who noticed that as he was studying why people buy things, he said a lot of people would buy a product they didn't necessarily understand or even need just because they were apprehensive that everybody else was going to buy it and they would be left behind. And so he noticed there was a trend, and he coined this phrase, fear of missing out. They were afraid they were going to miss out on an experience or something, so they just went ahead and purchased this thing that they didn't necessarily even know they wanted. I think marketers play on this. You've probably seen those late night infomercials where they'll say, you know, millions sold, everybody's got one, don't be left behind. And you're tempted to grab that phone and call or get on the internet and buy this thing that you don't really need just because you don't want to be the odd man out. But it really took off in the social media era. After a couple of years of everybody seeing people living their best lives online, FOMO became a part of everybody's lives. And then somebody conveniently came up with the acronym, and suddenly it stuck. In 2013, it was even added to the Oxford English Dictionary. If you don't know what that is, the Oxford English Dictionary, they are the gatekeepers of what is English language and what is not. Which makes me wonder if before 2013, if the word FOMO was feeling a little FOMO about not being in there where all the fun words were, right? I remember feeling FOMO when the iPhone 3 came out, or actually it was the 3G. When the iPhone 3G came out, it seemed like everyone had one. It just seemed like, I mean, before that, they were cool, you know, the really nerdy Apple people, not like me, the really nerdy Apple people had them. But then the iPhone 3G came out, the 3GS, and it seemed like everybody had one. Everywhere I looked, I remember Trey Shelton, I remember Trey Shelton had one. I remember my friend Sandy David had one. I remember everybody I looked around, they all had them. And you know what was worse? Every time you got an email, and at the bottom of the email, what did it say? Sent from an iPhone. Now, I knew that was a marketing ploy. Apple did that for years. They had those little Apple stickers you put on your car. They had this made on a Mac. But now, they got me. I get those emails, and it'd say sent from my iPhone. It'd be like, I could put that on my email, but it's not true. I mean, man. And I had a pretty decent flip phone. It was a pretty nice phone. It had like a keyboard. You could do some stuff with it. I was like, man, this is a pretty cool phone, but it wasn't an iPhone. And I remember, man, I had FOMO bad. I'm like, all these people have them. They're all so cool. I don't have an iPhone. This really stinks. And I knew how stupid it was, but I had FOMO bad. I remember reading a story about a girl who went to Coachella. Now, Coachella is a big music festival, kind of like Woodstock, but now, and very fancy. And she wanted to go to Coachella back in 2017. Now, in 2017, the cheapest ticket to go to Coachella and get a campsite was $360. And it was so popular that they had to split it over 2 weekends. And the promoters assured everybody, they said, it is going to be the exact same lineup. It doesn't matter if you go this weekend or this weekend, it will be exactly the same whenever you go. But this girl was just convinced they were lying. She was just sure that at the second weekend, they were going to bring in Beyonce as a surprise guest. But the problem was she couldn't go to the second weekend because she was supposed to be in her friend's wedding that weekend. So she did the only reasonable thing. She skipped the wedding, bought tickets to both weekends, and went, and guess what? There were no surprise guests. She had FOMO, and she admitted it. The LA Weekly ran a story on it, and she said, well, sure, Beyonce didn't come, but if she had, I'd have missed it, and I'd have been upset. She had FOMO. She was so afraid of missing out on something that she skipped her friend's wedding, paid another $650 to go to a concert that she'd already seen. It's not just people that can have FOMO. Companies can have it too. If you remember, I was talking about the iPhone. Well, you remember before that, the iPod. Well, the iPod came out in 2001, and Apple made millions of dollars. And by 2005, they had controlled 75% of the digital music industry. Then iPod buyers started buying Mac computers because they liked their iPod so much. Well, Microsoft was watching from the sidelines, and they were terrified. They're going, oh man, look at all this money we're not making. Look at all these people that are switching to Mac computers. If everybody switches, we won't have a business anymore. And so in early 2006, Microsoft was in a full-blown panic. So they greenlit the Zune digital music player in July and promised to have it on store shelves in time for Christmas. That's right. A company who historically had only made software, not hardware, decides to jump in and build a brand new hardware, device, and supporting ecosystem in just 4 months to compete with the market leader who's had a 5-year head start. The Zune came to the market on time, but that was the only positive about it. It was awful. It was big, it was clunky, the software was slow and buggy, and get this, it wasn't even compatible with Microsoft's own music store. So when it first came out, you couldn't even buy music to put on it. It was a complete failure, driven by FOMO. The reason I tell you these stories is because FOMO boils down to the first word, fear. Fear, being motivated by fear. Do any of us make good decisions when we're afraid? Is there anybody in here who, when you're going to make a decision, when you have to decide something really important in your life, who you're going to marry, where you're going to work, whether you're going to take that job, where you're going to move, how you're going to pay your taxes and your mortgage, what you're going to do, you got to make these really huge decisions. Do any of you say, well, let me get good and afraid first? No, because we all know that fear is a terrible motivator. We don't make good decisions based on fear, and neither did the Israelites. So in 1 Samuel 8, after the people come into the promised land, Moses and Joshua have both died. They're ruled by God. It's a theocracy. God is in charge, no king. And when they have trouble, God will raise up judges to deliver them. But when they walk away from God, when they stray, when they leave God, God will raise up other nations to oppress them in order to drive them back towards himself. So they get in this cycle of straying from God, being oppressed, raising up a judge to rescue them, returning to the Lord. Straying from God, being oppressed, God raises up a judge to rescue them, they return to the Lord. And for 400 years they go through this cycle. And they grow tired of it. They begin to fear these other nations. They become jealous of their kings. And so they go to Samuel, the last of the judges, the last person raised up by God to deliver them, and they tell him, we want a king. So the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, you are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. But when they said, give a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to him, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, it is me. They have rejected as king, as they have done from the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. So they're doing this to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly and let them know that the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. So God says, hey, I saw this coming a long time ago. Don't be upset about it. They're rejecting me. They've been rejecting me. They keep straying. They want a king. It's going to cost them. Just warn them what it's going to cost them. It's FOMO. They're afraid. They're afraid that other people have something that they don't, that other nations are passing them by and developing in a way that will make them strong and Israel vulnerable. They've forgotten about the time when they were just a bunch of wandering former slaves who brought down walls of fortress cities just by walking and shouting. They've forgotten about the time they crossed the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army was drowned. Right now, they're just afraid that they're missing out. And that's the thing about FOMO. It makes you forget the good that you have. I had a really good phone that called, that texted, that did all the things you need a phone to do, but it wasn't an iPhone. So I just felt like this phone I had was garbage. Maybe you have a really great car that runs good. It does a great job. It's reliable. You could probably put another 150,000 miles on it, but it's not new and it's not a Lexus. So if you start focusing on that, boy, this car I've got, it's terrible. It's just trash. FOMO makes you forget the good that you have. Every one of us in here is one of a very small percentage of people on the planet that can go into your home and open up your pantry and find food to eat. And you may say, no, Brian, there's nothing in my pantry. I ain't got nothing in my pantry. When we have nothing in our pantry, we probably have 20 to 40 pounds of groceries in our pantry. Now, sure, it might be that box of lasagna noodles that has been there for 3 years. Guess what? It's still edible. It may be those kidney beans that you don't even want to know the date on. I guarantee you could still eat them. You have food in your pantry right now that could probably feed you for a month. It's not going to be a 5-star restaurant food, but it would feed you. But we look at that food and go, oh, it's worthless, it's terrible, it's disgusting, I don't have anything. And we forget that there are millions upon millions of people on this planet who don't have that. That there are people in Gaza right now who are going days at a time without food. I read an account yesterday of a mother who goes each day searching for lentil dust to mix with water to feed her baby. And she's happy if she can get a handful of lentil dust to put in the water of her baby's bottle. When we have FOMO, when we have fear of missing out, we forget the good that we have. We forget that we have a pantry full of food. We forget that we have crops growing literally within feet of my house. I could grab an ear of corn off of a field. I have to talk to the person first, but you know. There are crops growing within feet of my house, and probably yours too. And we forget the good that we have when we have FOMO. FOMO is the thief of contentment. Now we're going to stop here. I'm going to come back and we're going to talk a little more in a minute. But I want to stop and just let that idea set for a few minutes. While we sing, while we worship, while we talk to God, I want us to think about the fact that we often, maybe it's not you, maybe it's just me, but I often let fear take away my contentment. Fear that I'm missing out, fear that there's not enough, fear that I'll never have, fear that I'll do without, take away the joy and the gratitude for what I've got. After this, I'll come back, we'll talk some more about it, and then we'll have the prayer time, we'll play some music, we'll have an opportunity to really wrestle with God about this, either individually or with a group. Right now, as we worship, I want you to ask yourself this question. What fear of missing out is driving you in a direction right now in your life? What fear of missing out is robbing you of your peace and your joy and your contentment? I read a book a couple of years ago by a guy named Jim Collins, and many of you may have read books by him. He's written a bunch of New York Times bestsellers, the most famous one being Good to Great, which is about successful companies. And he's done a lot of research over the years on really successful companies. This book was called How the Mighty Fall. And as he researched these successful companies, he got really interested in companies that were great, really, really great, for a really, really long time, and then all of a sudden crashed and burned. He wanted to know what made them great and what caused them to lose their greatness. He called these companies once great, now gone. They were huge, and now they're either out of business or completely irrelevant. These are companies you've heard of. Names, some of which they're still around because they've been bought. The last value of the trade name of a once great company is still being attached to things. Companies like RCA, Zenith, Blockbuster, Sears Roebuck, Pan Am, Kodak, BlackBerry. You know the names. And as he researched in this book, he found the following pattern that all of these companies exhibited. Stage one, they had a hubris born of success. Hubris is a fancy name for arrogance. They were very successful and they became arrogant about it. Stage two, they lost their discipline and they just pursued more and more and more. Stage three, they denied the risk and peril. They were so big, they were so successful that any risk or any peril out there, they just minimized it, denied it, pretended like it didn't exist until it was too late. And in stage four, when they realize that it may be too late, they start grasping for salvation, looking for a silver bullet to fix all their woes. And stage five is when they finally give in and realize, no, we're irrelevant or the company's going to be gone. And they just either survive in obscurity or they sell off the name brand to somebody else who milks it for another few decades for any value left in it. It's a fascinating book. Can you guess where the FOMO came in this sequence? Yeah, if you guess stage 4, you're right. When suddenly they woke up one day and realized that the company is over-leveraged, that the consumers aren't buying, that their reputation is shot, they became very, very afraid. They became afraid of their competitors, afraid of their future. They were afraid that they were going to miss out on the next big sale, and their fear drove them to make terrible, terrible decisions. They were so great for so long, they thought they could do whatever they wanted, so they did. When the alarm bells started ringing, they covered their ears, stuck their fingers down the ears, pretended they knew better. Who was to tell them, the great mammoth company, what they should do? But once there was no denying it, the writing was on the wall, they knew it was going to come crashing down around them. The FOMO hit. And most of these companies, in a last-ditch effort, gambled everything on some silver bullet cure-all, which didn't pay off. Zenith was the best TV manufacturer on the planet for decades. Does anybody in here today own a Zenith television? Does anybody in here own a Zenith anything? They were the best TV manufacturer on the planet. And people, when they shopped for TVs, they would try to buy a Zenith because of the quality. And so Zenith charged more. And more. And more. And when other companies started making high-quality TVs at a lower price point, they stuck their fingers in their ears and ignored it and kept charging more until people finally stopped paying more. And when they stopped paying more, Zenith took all of those resources, all that huge bank of profit that they put back over the years, and they gambled it all on unproven technologies like HD TV, which sounds like a pretty good bet, except this was in the early 80s. And another technology called phony vision with a PH. It was television delivered via your phone line, which sounds like a pretty good idea, except it was in the early 80s, and they called it phony vision, which people kind of thought was spelled with an F, so it didn't really... And so Zenith looked for these silver bullet cure-alls, and when they spent all their capital, they spectacularly collapsed. So here's Israel. Israel came into the promised land with a reputation that left other nations trembling. Oh, they defeated Egypt. They took down Jericho. They ran their God is powerful. They kind of had a little spring in their step. They felt pretty good about themselves. Say, look at us. We're the chosen people. We are God's chosen people. So they stuck their fingers in their ears and they denied any risk. Oh, a little treaty here, a little running after an idol there, worship on a high place here. That's not going to matter. Fingers in their ears. They took it for granted. And when they sinned, God withdrew his favor. And they were attacked by other nations. And at some point during the time of the judges, the Israelites looked up and the fingers came out of their ears and they realized it was coming crashing down around them because of their sin. And this is what they saw. To the northeast, the king of Aram This king controlled multiple city-states, and for 8 years he relentlessly attacked Israel. To the north, King Jabin of Hazor, one of the largest and most powerful city-states in all of Canaan. He commanded a well-equipped army with iron chariots. The Israelites didn't have any chariots. His commander Sisera raided Israelite settlements for 2 decades. Directly to the east, the king of the Ammonites, who by signing a declaration and sealing it with his ring, made royal decrees that could muster huge armies from among his people, which he did not hesitate to muster and deploy against the people of Israel. And across to the Dead Sea to the southeast, King Eglon, the king of Moab, a long-standing kingdom who engraved their victories over Israel into giant granite monuments that have survived to this day. And finally, to the south and the west, practically within the borders of Israel itself, were the upstart Philistines. Now, we know about the Philistines because of Goliath and because of David's fighting with them. But what you might not know is the Philistines didn't come from this land. The Philistines were seafaring people. They either came from Manoah or Mycenae or one of these other islands in the Aegean Sea. And what they did is they developed this mastery and this control of sailing and sailing warfare, and they used it to attack Egypt, and they almost beat Egypt. They barely lost to Egypt, but instead of going home, they decided they would settle just north of Egypt on the coast of Palestine, what is now the Gaza Strip, and they developed 5 cities there. And each of these cities had their own king. And they had advanced knowledge of sailing, of warfare, of iron smelting, the technology to make weapons and chariots that other people in the area did not have. This allowed them to create powerful swords, strong shields, iron chariots, and fortified cities. It's interesting because we actually have reliefs, which are carvings that were put onto the walls in Egypt of the war between Egypt and the Philistine people, the pre-Philistine people, these seafaring people. The people of the sea. And in these carvings where Egypt is declaring their victory over them, they show them in their warrior outfits with feather headdresses and armor and shields and swords. And people didn't have these things at this time. They were well equipped, they had good technology, and they settled right there in Israel. So throughout the time of the judges, at any point, the Israelites could look up, and wherever they looked on the compass, they were surrounded by nations with kings that had technologies that they didn't, that could muster armies that they couldn't, that had organization and administrative powers and treasuries that they lacked. And they got very, very afraid. They can see the writing on the wall. For years, they thought their God was too big to fail. And now they have allowed the enemy to grow up right next door. No, there will be no more theocracy where God rules. No more judges. They won't be left behind anymore. They want a king who can raise up armies, who can build up a treasury, who can build fortifications, who can have administration, who can build technology, who can build chariots, who can mine for copper and bronze, and mine for these things to build all these weapons. That's what they want. So they will not be left behind by these other nations developing around them, because they don't believe any longer in the ability of their God to defend them. They want a king, they want armies, they want weapons, and they want respect from the other nations. And Samuel warns them. He says, the king will tax you. He will take your crops and your fields, your livestock. He will take your sons and send them into battles where they will not return. He will take your daughters, and they will be maids and servants and concubines. He will take your vineyards and your olive groves. He will force you into labor to build your palaces and your fortresses. He will rule over you, and you won't like it. And this is where we come to the most important word in the entire text that we've read today. And it's in 1 Samuel 8:19. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. It doesn't say they were standing too far away and they couldn't hear him. Samuel told him all these things, but he didn't have a microphone. And so the people in the back didn't hear it. No, it says they refused. They heard it, but they refused to listen. They shoved their fingers in their ears. They said, we will not listen to anything you say because we want what we want. Because they were driven by fear. So here's the thing. We can sit here today with our 3,000 years of perspective and we can judge them. But you need to know, they weren't stupid. They weren't ignorant. If the people 3,000 years ago lived today and took the same education, had the same education you had, they'd score just the same as you or I would on standardized tests. They were not stupid people. They were not emotionally immature. In fact, many scholars and anthropologists and sociologists believe that ancient people were more emotionally mature than we are today. They were humans like us. And we do the exact same things. And all of our air conditioning and our internet and our sophistication, we still get driven by our own fear. We kick and we cry and we scream because we want what we want. And when God tells us we don't need it, we stick our fingers in our ears and we refuse to listen. We close our eyes, we close our ears, and we get on the floor and bang our fists and throw a tantrum demanding what we want from God. Even if it's harmful for us, because we don't want to miss out. Because we're afraid that God won't give us what we need, so we have to get it for ourselves. So what do we learn from the lesson today? What do we do today to learn to open our ears back up? Because honestly, our fingers may be shoved so far in our ears right now that we can't even hear God calling us to something better. We may be doing what we want to do and not even listening to God's word. I mean, maybe not you, but I know I'm capable of it. And what I want is what I want. I say, okay, Lord, tell me what I should do. Tell me what I need. And then I put my fingers in my ears and I don't listen. But what I want to do, what I sincerely want to do in my heart of hearts, if I can get out of my own way, is I'm going to pull my fingers out of my ear and I would say, okay, Lord, tell me what I need, and I want to listen, and I want to obey. Open my heart up, God. Take this hard heart inside of me and give me a heart of flesh. Speak into me. Let me listen. Let me hear. Tell me the hard things, and give me the strength to do them. That's what I want. I want to say, Lord, your servant is listening. I don't ever want to refuse to listen to the word of God. What I want to say is, God, I yield myself to you. So, we're going to try and create some space for all of us to do that right now. In a moment, we're going to have prayer time. I told you before, this is something we do fairly regularly. We're going to turn the lights down. We're going to play a video with some music. There'll be some instructions on the screen. If you want to completely ignore the screen, you can. You are invited during that time to do one of a couple things. You can sit in your seat and you can talk to God personally, intimately, just you and him. You can listen to the lyrics of the song. You can pray. You can open yourself to God personally. Another option. You could lean into the people around you, to your husband, your wife, your child, your friend, your uncle, your aunt, your grandparent. You could get up next to them, pull them close. You could pray together with them. That's another option. Here's a third option. You can get up from your seat and go wherever you want. If you want to come up and kneel at the stage, there's nothing special about this stage, but you can do that. If you want to grab a shepherd or a friend and go somewhere and say, I need to talk, you do that. If you want to go over and find somebody and lay hands on them and say, Lord, just put you on my heart and I want to pray for you, you can do that. If you want to gather with 3 or 4 people and get in the center of the aisle and make a circle and put your arms around each other and pray and cry, you can do that. This is a time for you to encounter God with God's people. And we're just going to create the space. We're going to play a very touching song called Yield by John Reddick. After a minute or two of the song, there'll be a point in the video where there'll be about 3 minutes where there won't be any lyrics. Give you some space and time. If you need more time than that, you just take it. We would love nothing more than to see a dozen small groups of people gathered around in different places in this auditorium. if you don't know what to pray, if you don't know what to say, if you don't know how to start, try something like this. Pray this together with me. God, open our hearts to hear your truth. Do not allow us to refuse to hear you any longer. We seek your will, not what we think we want.